Yeah, it's in an alien language, but I now know that there are aliens living there. So we can go visit that star now. So this is a different system that we're in. Looks like they had a little accident or something here. This is another race. Now, this is the point at which I am overtly browsing other players' worlds, okay? So this entire world was created by another player, and now the computer, it's downloaded to my machine. And I want to emphasize this is asynchronous. It's not a simultaneous multiplayer game. I download it from the other player, and the computer takes over control based upon the personality sliders that the other players kind of set for it when they evolved it. So let's go visit these guys. This is kind of a little hot planet because it's so close to the sun. You can see it has kind of a very different geology. Very arid. There's a very large sun there. Looks like they have a big city over here. We'll kind of approach slowly. Now, when we're doing first contact with the other species, you have to kind of play this little close encounters musical game with them to try and establish a language. And they may or may not respond well, depending on how you play it. So I'll try that now. Okay. But luckily we have defensive tools as well. So this is Space Invaders. My weapons are seeming a little ineffectual against them. But as I mentioned, all of our tools in the UFO come in many different flavors. So. So there go our friends, and there goes my reputation as a non-violent game developer. But we had made a new ring. It was a nice crafts project. So I'll just pull out to here. We're going to leave this place. There's nothing more to see here. Move away now. Okay, so at this level, the space level, we actually want to build a set of metagames around, basically my favorite genres of science fiction. Each one of these is going to be a metagame at this level. Starting with something like War of the Worlds, kind of an adult supervision, Peacemaker, Day of the Earth Stood Still type scenarios. Uplift, where I go to worlds that have just primitive creatures. I can drop down a monolith, and basically come back later and see how they've evolved to intelligence to see those worlds. First Contact. Abduction and crossbreeding, of course. You'll have free access to most of the editors at that point. So at this point, I can go back into the creature editor for free and make weird alien, hybrids. And diplomacy. Every race is going to have its own kind of personality. We're actually using the Star Trek races as kind of landmarks, making sure that we get, with the smallest number of dimensions, we can clearly distinguish between all these races, so that when I go up and interact, and I have like the Klingons versus the Borg, or my versions of these things, that they should behave appropriately with each other. They, these don't want to fight or trade or just be good friends and share, cool ideas, whatever. We want the space game to really feel very, very open-ended, and this is where I think most of the narrative is going to come into the game. I want the players to feel like they're creating these worlds. If you look at some of the old comic book covers from the 30s and 40s, that's what I want the players to feel like they can make these worlds of this variety. And if you look at these covers, they mostly, they have vehicles, buildings, aliens, and planets. So all the different things that we have editors for are represented on these covers. This is some of the concept art we did for trying to get a sense of how broad we think players can build worlds aesthetically. Now, the pollination at this level is that we're actually doing overt browsing. I'm actually going to another player's entire planet. When I'm on the planet, I can actually, abduct their creatures, steal vehicles, and they enter my library. I can use their creatures to go back and populate like an entire zoo planet if I choose to. So really, we have these different levels of gameplay. And the overall structure of the game now is that of a T. That we're going up through evolution, through all these different levels, And then we have these very broad set of metagames above it at the space level. And this is actually a little bit opposite than most games, because what we're doing here is we're putting the more goal-oriented gaming first as the tutorial for the eventual sandbox, which will then surf down through all these levels. In most games, you think about it, the sandbox is kind of the tutorial. That's where you learn to play the game, and then you go play the real goal-oriented game. We're using the goal-oriented game to basically train you to use all the editors and to teach you the simulation dynamics at every level, so that by the time you get to the space game, you can kind of fractally surf, both horizontally, from planet to planet, and vertically, from like city to civ to tribal. So eventually, with the players creating all these different worlds here, pull out a little bit more. Now, the region we were in was like this little square here. I think we can actually create a whole galaxy here of, tens, hundreds of thousands of worlds that the player can visit and interact with and kind of make up their own game along the way. This was, you might kind of notice this was an idea I've had a long time ago was Powers of 10. I've always been a big fan of the Eameses. But I never, in my mind, could figure out a way to kind of roll this into a game and actually make it all add up. More recently, I started working on a SETI game,